Hello and welcome and namaste from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up over the next 1 hour. Iran targets a US airbase in Kuwait after Washington hits a drone operation near the Strait of Hormuz. President Donald Trump also rejects talks of a compromise deal with Tehran. Ukraine to buy 20 latest model Gripen fighter jets and Sweden to donate another 16 older models to boost its air defences as Kyiv's parliament ratifies a €90 billion EU loan agreement. External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar discusses opportunities, collaborations with European Union at Gymnich meeting, calls on Cyprus President Nikos Christodoulidis. And world number one Jannik Sinner collapses in Paris heat, crashing out in the second round of the French Open, putting pay to his dreams of a career Grand Slam. The fragile US-Iran ceasefire is under fresh strain, with both the sides accusing each other of new attacks and violations. American strikes inside Iran, retaliatory Iranian action and rising tensions over the Strait of Hormuz are fueling fears of a wider regional conflict, even as diplomatic efforts hang in the balance. Here's more in this report.
A fragile ceasefire between the United States and Iran is hanging by a thread tonight as both sides accuse each other of violating the truce with fresh military action. The latest escalation marks the most serious flare-up since the ceasefire began in April, raising fears that diplomatic efforts to end the conflict could collapse altogether. Overnight, the US military launched strikes inside Iran, targeting what it described as military infrastructure, threatening American forces and commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Washington says it shot down 4 Iranian drones and struck a command center in the strategic port city of Bandar Abbas, calling the operation purely defensive. The tensions come amid sharp rhetoric from US President Donald Trump, who rejected reports of a proposed Iran-Oman arrangement to oversee shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump warned that the waterway would remain open but not controlled by anybody, while also making it clear that Washington is not considering sanctions relief for Tehran.
International waters, nobody's going to control it. We're going to watch over it. We'll watch over it, but nobody's going to control it. That's part of the negotiation that we have. They would like to control it. Nobody's going to control it. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up. They understand that. They'll be fine. In addition to that, you have a lot of boats. You have about 1,500 boats in the strait wanting to get out, and at the right time, we'll release them.
In a further crackdown, the United States imposed sanctions on Iran's Persian Gulf Strait Authority and restricted Iranian airlines from access to landing, refueling, and ticketing services. Iran responded with retaliatory strikes on an American base early Thursday. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said the attack targeted an air base linked to what it called US aggression, warning that any future action against Iran would trigger a more decisive response. Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, has meanwhile accused the United States and Israel of attempting to destabilize the Islamic Republic.
The enemy's blind plan after the imposed war, the economic pressure, and the political and propaganda seeds is to create divisions and disintegration in order to compensate for military defeats and bring the nation to its knees.
And beyond Iran, the wider region remains volatile. In Lebanon, clashes between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah are intensifying despite a separate ceasefire agreement. Israel says it carried out precision strikes near Beirut and targeted Hezbollah infrastructure around Tyre after issuing evacuation warnings to residents. With tensions rising across multiple fronts, fears are growing that the region could be pushed closer to a broader and more dangerous conflict. Bureau Report, DD India.
And you may have noted suddenly even Oman is in the American crosshairs. We'll tell you all about it a little later in the show when we talk about the entire West Asia conflict with our expert guest. But moving on for the time being, European Union foreign ministers have met in Cyprus on Thursday. They discussed Europe's approach to any future engagement with Russia, with EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas stressing that an unconditional ceasefire is a prerequisite for peace negotiations. Kallas also said that European Union cannot be a neutral mediator in the conflict and called for member states to first agree on a common position. More in this report.
As the conflict in Ukraine drags on and tensions between Russia and the West deepen, European leaders are seeking to sharpen their strategy before any future engagement with Moscow. Meeting in Cyprus on Thursday, EU foreign ministers debated the path to peace in Ukraine, Europe's role in possible negotiations, and growing security concerns stretching from Eastern Europe to the West Asia. The ministers reviewed Europe's approach to any future talks with Russia as Ukraine seeks a stronger European role in negotiations. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said an unconditional ceasefire is essential before any peace talks can begin.
Unconditional ceasefire is a prerequisite for any kind of peace negotiations. That was also underlined by ministers today. Russia must stop sabotage operations, cyber attacks, election interference, airspace violations across Europe.
Kallas also rejected the idea of Europe acting as a neutral intermediary in the conflict, saying the bloc stands firmly with Ukraine and is defending its own security interest. She urged member states to first build a common position before engaging with Moscow.
One thing is very clear. Europe will never be a neutral mediator between Russia and Ukraine because we are on Ukraine's side and we are defending our own core security interests. It is clear that all our efforts have to be also complementary to U.S. efforts, and ministers were also very clear about this. We are not, coming in instead of the United States, but we are actually addressing the issues that they haven't been addressing in these talks.
Meanwhile, Russia has accused Europe of contributing to rising security threats. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said drone attacks on Russian territory from the direction of Europe were increasing.
We see statements from NATO and its member countries that they are not making their airspace and territory available for strikes on Russia. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte calls these accusations, quote, absurd. Nevertheless, drone attacks from the Baltic and northern European states against targets in Russia not only continue but are also increasing in intensity.
Moscow has expressed concern that Ukrainian drones could be using Baltic or other countries' airspace to launch attacks on Russia. The developments underscore the widening divide between Brussels and Moscow, even as discussions continue over the prospects for future diplomatic engagement. Nishtoy Roy reports for DT India.
An External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, has concluded a highly productive visit to Cyprus, where he participated in the informal Gymnich meeting of European Union foreign ministers. During the visit, Dr. Jaishankar held a series of high-level meetings with EU leaders and foreign ministers on key regional and global developments. Discussions focused on strengthening India-EU cooperation, the situation in West Asia, and the evolving multipolar global order. More in this report.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar concluded a highly productive visit to Limassol, Cyprus, where he participated in the informal Gymnich meeting of the European Union Foreign Affairs Ministers. In a post on X, the minister said that he had productive engagements at the meeting in Cyprus while reaffirming India's ties with the EU and the Mediterranean. Dr. Jaishankar attended the meeting as a distinguished guest from India at the invitation of European Commission Vice President and EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. The discussions focused on current regional and global developments. The meeting was conducted in the Gymnich format, held once every 6 months, which allows for open and informal discussions among foreign ministers on key international issues. Jaishankar engaged with EU counterparts to discuss practical collaborations and shared interest in the context of an emerging multipolar global order. He held a meeting with EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas in Limassol. Leaders reviewed India-EU cooperation and exchanged views on the situation in West Asia. He also called on Cyprus President Nikos Christodoulitis and conveyed the greetings of President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Dr. Jaishankar also met Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud and appreciated his assessments and insights on the evolving regional situation. The Saudi Foreign Minister also attended the meeting as a distinguished guest. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar also held a useful meeting with Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha. Leaders exchanged views on the Ukraine conflict and discussed avenues for further bilateral cooperation. Jaishankar also held meetings with Poland's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski, Romanian Foreign Minister and Netherlands Foreign Minister. Dr. Jaishankar further met Estonian Foreign Minister, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot, Spanish Foreign Minister and European Commissioner for the Mediterranean. During these interactions, leaders exchanged views on regional and global developments and discussed issues of mutual interest. Bureau Report, DD India.
And still to come on DD India Newshour. Russia signs a $16.5 billion deal to build the first nuclear power plant in Kazakhstan. World Health Organization chief heads to Congo as the US commits $80 million to the fight against the Ebola outbreak. And US first quarter GDP growth revised lower to 1.6% pace even as inflation climbs.
A special series of programs to commemorate 12 years of the Narendra Modi government. What has the post of Chief of Defence Staff brought to the military?
CDS has provided probably that direction and speed. Credibility of what you do will be out of the results which you produce. Three services also have their agendas. They want to modernize, they want to move ahead.
Being a secretary of DMA, you attend all the secretary meetings with the Prime Minister, the higher authorities, other ministers. Does that bring in a lot of synergy?
You understand how the government is thinking, what are they working on, and then you can actually tell that to pass it down to the services, which earlier was missing actually.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour. I am Gautam Roy. Now, Ukraine's parliament has ratified a loan agreement with the European Union on Thursday, paving the way for €90 billion in financing and allowing the government to channel record funds to defence and the war with Russia now in its fifth year. The Kyiv parliament ratified the loan agreement with the EU with 298 votes, well ahead of the 226 votes required for a majority. Immediately after the vote, President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked the lawmakers and European partners, saying the funds from the EU would strengthen Ukraine's resilience. And later, Zelensky said that the vote was one of the most important, one that demonstrates the constructive nature of the joint work and the readiness to hear one another. The EU gave its final approval to the €90 billion loan for Ukraine last month after Hungary lifted its veto, ending months of delays and easing pressures on the Ukrainian state budget. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the vote paved the way for the first disbursements in June. The government expects to receive €3.2 billion next month and a total of €45 billion this year. The remaining €45 billion would be kept for 2027. And Ukraine will buy 20 new Saab Gripen fighter jets from Sweden, while Stockholm will donate 16 older Gripen C/D aircraft next year. The announcement was made by Ukrainian President Zelensky and Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson during a joint press conference in Sweden. The move is aimed at strengthening Ukraine's air defense amid the ongoing conflict with Russia. Sweden has already provided significant military and civilian aid to Ukraine, while the Gripen jets are considered cost-effective and suitable for wartime operations due to their easy maintenance and ability to operate from dispersed bases and shorter runways.
These jets with very specific weapon, and we are very thankful that we will get jets with weapon, not just jets. These jets, Gripens, with specific weapons, especially meteors, missiles, and etc., which can destroy 200 kilometers plus. So we think that we will push out these jets, Russian jets, and they will not be able to use massively aerial bombs.
Ukraine has clearly identified Gripen as their priority choice for a long-term air force in Ukraine, and that they want to buy latest version Gripen E and F. In a first step, today's agreement between Sweden and Ukraine means that they will buy 20 new Gripen E. Negotiations on the detail and all preparations are ongoing, but the ambition is to quickly conclude agreement that will make deliveries from 2030.
Now, Russia signed an agreement on Tuesday with Kazakhstan to build the first nuclear power plant in Central Asia's largest country at a cost of about $16.5 billion, partially covered by a major export loan from Moscow. Kazakhstan, the world's biggest producer of uranium and a country which suffered from the fallout from Soviet nuclear testing, has been discussing the possibility of atomic power for the last 2 decades. A 2024 referendum returned a vote in favor of constructing a nuclear power plant and designated the village of Ulkan on the shores of Lake Balkhash in the southeast of the country as the site. The two sides also signed an agreement on the provision of Russian export credit to finance construction of the plant. Russia's state nuclear corporation Rosatom won the lead role in building the plant, edging out China National Nuclear Corporation, French utility EDF, and Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power, according to Kazakhstan's Atomic Energy Agency. Construction will begin in 2027 and the first reactor will be commissioned in early 2034. Latvia's parliament has voted in a new centre-right government following the collapse of the previous coalition amid a political row over stray Ukrainian drones. Centrist leader Andris Kulbergs has been confirmed as the country's new prime minister and will lead the Baltic nation until parliamentary elections in October. The previous government fell after former Prime Minister Evika Selina dismissed her defense minister over delays in deploying anti-drone systems after 2 Ukrainian drones reportedly entered Latvian territory. The new coalition has pledged to strengthen national security, reinforce border protection and maintain strong support for Ukraine while continuing Latvia's pro-European Union and pro-NATO stance. German Finance Minister Lars Kleinbiel has said on Thursday that the finance ministers of the 6 biggest European economies are seeking to find a common position on a European Commission proposal for joint capital market supervision. The European Commission presented a plan in December last year to better integrate EU capital markets through joint supervision, moving it from national authorities to the European Securities and Markets Authority in Paris. The ministers of Germany, France, Italy, Poland, Spain and the Netherlands are meeting in Berlin on Thursday to discuss how to advance the capital markets union. The E6 had already come out in support of centralized capital market supervision in the EU in March. French President Emmanuel Macron welcomed Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto to the Elysee Presidential Palace in Paris on Thursday. The meeting is aimed at enriching cooperation between the two countries on defense, energy, agriculture and transport, among others, according to a statement by the palace. The meeting in the French capital comes exactly 1 year after Macron's visit to Indonesia. Macron said he will also discuss with Subianto the conflict in West Asia and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which has heavily impacted fuel prices in many Asian nations. Subianto said that stability in West Asia is crucial and will directly impact global energy conditions and global supply chains. Indonesia has recently increased its fuel subsidy budget to shield people from the impact of rising global crude prices. Japan and the Philippines have said on Thursday that they would begin talks on an agreement to share classified information to allow Tokyo to step up transfers of military equipment to Manila, including warships. Tokyo and Manila have been steadily upgrading defense and security ties in response to China's growing influence in the South China Sea and around Taiwan. Japan recently scrapped long-standing restrictions on combat equipment exports, a change expected to benefit the Philippines. During his 4-day visit, Philippines' President Ferdinand Marcos has sought closer alignment with Japan, dovetailing with its push to shore up security partnerships with the United States and its allies. The world is stepping up efforts to contain and prevent the Ebola outbreak in Central Africa as the World Health Organization's chief is heading to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Humanitarian agencies are also increasing support, while the US has announced an $80 million commitment for response efforts in Congo and Uganda. Nitesh Kumar reports.
The World Health Organization has intensified its response after a deadly Ebola outbreak spread across the Democratic Republic of Congo. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus is heading to the Ebola-hit region along with health teams and emergency workers, pledging to do everything in power to help contain the outbreak. In a message to people in the conflict-hit Ituri province of Congo, where more than 90% of cases have been reported, Tedros said the outbreak was among the most devastating in history because it is unfolding amid armed conflict. The WHO chief warned that the current outbreak caused by the Ebola Bundibugyo virus currently has no approved vaccine or treatment. Still, he expressed confidence that the outbreak can be defeated. The WHO has recorded 10 confirmed and 223 suspected Ebola-related deaths in DR Congo since the outbreak was declared in mid-May, with more than 1,000 confirmed and suspected cases reported so far. Meanwhile, Africa's CDC officials in a press briefing on Thursday confirmed that Ebola cases in neighboring Uganda have increased to 8, raising concerns about cross-border transmission. The WHO, along with Congo's National Medical Research Organization, has scaled up Ebola diagnostic capacities to strengthen laboratory networks, provide real-time data, and rapidly identify confirmed cases. Humanitarian workers on Thursday unloaded medicines, protective equipment, and emergency supplies from cargo planes at Bunia Airport in eastern DR Congo as global aid efforts intensified. UNICEF Emergency Chief Jerome Kouachi said nearly 100 tons of humanitarian supplies would arrive over 8 days through an air bridge from Nairobi. India has also sent emergency pharmaceutical supplies, including diagnostics, therapeutics, and infection prevention materials to support affected communities in eastern DR Congo. Africa CDC praised India for its continued commitment to strengthening health security across Africa. As WHO declared Ebola a public health emergency and warned of a high risk of international spread, countries around the world have tightened travel and surveillance measures. India has launched screening and surveillance measures at airports and other entry points, while Thailand has announced mandatory 21-day quarantine measures for travelers arriving from or through affected regions. Meanwhile, Kenya has approved the establishment of a US-supported Ebola quarantine and treatment facility on its soil as global efforts intensify to prevent a wider outbreak. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, the world is bracing for a new wave of extreme weather, with a UN-backed report warning that record-breaking global temperatures could continue through the end of this decade. While Europe is already reeling under an early season heat wave, parts of India are witnessing a sharp contrast, with thunderstorms and spells of rain bringing temporary relief even as heatwave conditions persist in several other regions. DD India's Riya Raj has this report.
The world could witness more record-breaking heat in the coming years. According to a new report released by the United Nations Weather Agency and the UK Met Office, global temperatures are expected to remain at or near historic highs through the end of the decade. The report warns that at least 1 year between 2026 and 2030 is likely to become hotter than 2024, currently the warmest year ever recorded. Scientists say a possible El Niño event could further drive up global temperatures. Across Europe, several countries are experiencing intense early season heat. Italy is facing its first major heat wave of the year, with temperatures crossing 35 degrees Celsius in several cities. Italy's health ministry has issued a red heat wave alert for Rome, Florence, Bologna, Brescia and Turin, the first of the year, as temperatures continue to rise across the country. Spain is also witnessing unusually high temperatures for late spring, with some regions recording highs of up to 37 degrees Celsius and exceptionally warm nights. Spain's weather agency has warned that a wet start to the year has increased vegetation growth, raising the risk of wildfires as summer approaches.
We have had a very wet start to the year, so there's a significant amount of vegetation in our forest. And with these high temperatures, it will of course dry out and become a major fuel source, increasing the risk of forest fires. We have to wait a little longer for the season to progress, but if these high temperatures continue, the fire risk will certainly skyrocket to very high or extreme levels in many parts of our country as the summer progresses.
Britain, France, and Ireland have also reported unusually high May temperatures as a heat dome drives midsummer-like conditions across parts of Western Europe. In India, weather conditions remain highly dynamic across several states. Light rainfall brought brief relief to parts of Delhi NCR on Thursday evening, easing the intense heat. India's weather agency has issued an orange alert for Delhi NCR, warning of thunderstorms, lightning, and isolated hailstorms. At the same time, heat wave conditions continue over parts of north and central India. Meanwhile, thunderstorms, dust storms, and heavy rainfall are also likely in parts of northeast India, indicating a sharp contrast in weather patterns across the country. Ria Rajas report for DD India.
Meanwhile, it was Portugal's turn to record its hottest May day ever, 40.3 degrees Celsius in Portugal's central town of Moura. So it remains a challenge, the rising heat. Now, US economic growth was not as strong as initially thought in the first quarter, and momentum is set to slow this quarter with the war with Iran stoking inflation and squeezing households' finances. Gross domestic product increased at a 1.6% annualized rate last quarter. The Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis said in its second estimate of first quarter GDP on Thursday. Growth was previously reported to have advanced at a 2% pace. The economy grew at 0.5% pace in the fourth quarter. The downgrade to the first quarter GDP estimate reflects downward revisions to inventory investment and consumer spending. Overall economic activity is mostly being driven by artificial intelligence-related spending. Growth in consumer spending, which accounts for more than two-thirds of the economy, was revised down to a 1.4% rate from the previously reported 1.6% pace. Hefty tax refunds provided some cushion to households from soaring gasoline prices. Profits from current production rose at a $40.4 billion rate in the first quarter, a sharp slowdown from the $246.9 billion growth pace in the fourth quarter. And Wall Street's main indices opened flat on Thursday as investors processed key inflation data, while intensifying tensions between the US and Iran kept optimism surrounding a peace deal in check. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 16.7 points or 0.03%. The S&P 500 fell 0.5 points or 0.01%, while the Nasdaq Composite rose 11.8 points or 0.04% at opening bell. Let's now take a look at some other stories making news around the world as well. Japanese rock icon Yoshiki is set to return to the American stage this summer with two performances in Los Angeles' Walt Disney Concert Hall, marking his first US concerts since undergoing cervical spine surgery in late 2024. Despite the arrival of spring, massive snow walls up to 10 meters high continue to cover Mount Nemrut in Turkey. The towering snow corridors and crater lake at the summit are attracting visitors eager to witness the rare snowy landscape. Musician and artist Jack White has unveiled his new exhibition, These Thoughts May Disappear, at London's Newport Street Gallery. The show features decades of paintings, sculptures and upholstery works, including collaborations with British artist Damien Hirst. And still to come on DD India Newshour. We'll be speaking with an expert guest about the latest developments in the West Asia conflict, where US and Iran keep exchanging strikes while negotiating for peace. India and Singapore discussed deeper strategic cooperation at their 16th Defence Policy Dialogue. And senior Congress leader Siddaramaiah announces his resignation as Karnataka Chief Minister.
India is home to some of the most venomous snakes in the world. 50,000 Indians almost die every year because of snake bites. And in that moment, knowing what to do can really help save a life.
Students know, they know climate change, they know global warming, they know plastics, they know microplastics. They really know what it means on a daily basis. So the connect with the environment is missing. The connect to real life every day is missing.
A eucalypt in a new environment, you're very likely to change what we call fire regimes. So fire regimes are the patterns of fire across the landscape and through time.
We add the already colonized mycelium into this sort of jute bags, and we take it to the forest for the process of which is called mycoremediation, where we are introducing more mycelium in a certain ecosystem for basically helping the ecosystem to thrive more and also for the mycelium to grow in the same process.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, the latest in the West Asia conflict is that Oman has been threatened by US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent now over joining hands with Iran in charging any tolls for letting ships cross Hormuz. Sanctions have been threatened earlier. Donald Trump said that Oman could even be bombed, and there have, of course, blows that have been exchanged, strikes that have been exchanged between Iran and the US as well, amidst a ceasefire while they're trying to talk about peace as well. Joining us now to talk about it, we have Bozhin Wagmar. He's from the Center of Iranian Studies at SOAS, the University of London, joining us from London. Good evening from Delhi. Bozhin, what do you make of the situation? Are we closer to returning to conflict, or are we closer to peace where this entire US-Israel-Iran situation is concerned?
It's a stalemate, and it's a stalemate in more ways than one, because I do not see any light at the end of the tunnel. If that's what you want to know, first things first, a simple answer. No, because what happened this Monday, and the latest skirmish must be put into context. It's not that Mr. Trump is being unnecessarily bellicose and went in for a fight again. It's just that Iran was caught out laying additional mines in the Strait of Hormuz region. And US intelligence surveillance has been there 24/7, needless to state, and they caught the IRGC Navy doing just that, which is what led CENTCOM to attack them. And when the Pentagon said that it was a self-defense measure, what exactly is self-defense? You see, the Iranians were caught in the act, and at the same time, because US surveillance aircraft were in the region, they opened their anti-aircraft battery missiles. And that constitutes a military threat. So it was self-defense when the attack took place by CENTCOM in Hormuzgan province. So I would place that into context. Then the question of this latest kerfuffle of blowing up the Sultanate of Oman, well, I wouldn't capitalize, much less afford credence to that. What Mr. Trump meant and what we ought to be concentrating on is that Muscat has been consistent that they wish to play no part in any apportioning of so-called fees, these toll fees, which is nothing but blackmail from every and any vessel passing through the Strait of Hormuz. They have said that they have no intention of sharing any fees on it. What they have been doing so far historically is sharing maritime sovereignty over the strait, which indeed falls within Omani jurisdiction too. And speaking of jurisdiction, Iran, the Islamic Republic, has never signed the UNCLOS, UN Convention, International Law of the Sea of the 1982 mechanism, global mechanism on that. So Iran cherry picks its way through what it takes aspects of the International Law of the Sea. And clearly this works in its favor and has been its trump card in the recent war, 2-month war, by blocking the strait and creating problems for practically everyone concerned. But then there is a backlash in that Iran can't export its own products. And what has happened most recently last week is that they had to bring out mothballed 30-year-old tankers to store surplus refined crude, which was supposedly on its way for export, but has not been exported, much less shipped out because of the blockade imposed by Washington. And that in itself is creating havoc because between 13th April and mid-May, Iran is losing a good at least $175 to $250 million daily of what would have been oil proceeds.
But you said that Muscat has already made it clear that it won't partake in any of this ploy or bid to impose tolls or extract any kind of fee for allowing these tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. Why is Trump and then even Scott Bessent now threatening Oman, Muscat?
Well, that remark must be seen just as President Trump speaking off the cuff, which he tends to do so, and as the Secretary would have said. But they know very well Muscat's position that it is not interested in garnering any such proceeds. And think about it, even for argument's sake, if there was some rumor adrift that Muscat is mulling with sharing proceeds on this with Iran, for argument's sake, and it is ludicrous, which I'll show you in a moment, do you think Oman would be able to handle that with its GCC allies, who all have collectively suffered? Oman places a premium on its relations with its other 5 GCC states, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. It certainly doesn't prioritize its relations with Iran, not by a long chalk. Why would it go with Iran on the flow on this one for any reason at all? So it beggars belief that Muscat could agree to anything like that, because you have to put the GCC element front, right, and center in any such ramification and consequences that would hold out.
All right. And as far as these strikes are concerned, we've had now 2 within a span of 3 or 4 days, Monday and now Wednesday, and that's when it actually happened. But do you feel that this really doesn't indicate that there could be another return to what happened, weeks earlier from 28th February onwards? Because both sides don't seem to be keen to get back to that kind of levels of hostility.
Yes and no. For argument's sake, I would not rule it out entirely. You see, you can make an argument, as you've proposed, that the US would be loath to further kinetic action as we approach the midterm polls in November.
Yeah, Trump said that I don't care about the midterms.
Yes, well, again, that's rhetoric, as what politicians and Mr.
Bravado,
Trump...
one would say.
Mr. Trump is a creature of his own making as an unconventional politician. He is not a conventional politician, much less a diplomat. I think that ought to be quite plain to everyone. But the point is, when he says, now let's take that last point that you mentioned. When he says that, it shows that he's not shifting his position and he's steadfast on this aspect. And one consistency in Mr. Trump is that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon which would threaten the entire region. That is a red line he has maintained all along, that Iran's stockpile has to be either diluted or shipped out. And on both counts, in the most recent spate of talks, whether in Islamabad or Doha, Iran is dragging its feet because it claims that this nuclear sovereignty and we can do what we want, so on and so forth. And that was also part of what happened prior to 28th February. You must remember that when Secretary Rubio mentioned, and perhaps he should have clarified in Delhi last week, you see, in the last week before this fight started on Saturday morning, 28th Feb, Washington proposed we would offer you all the civilian nuclear fuel in the world that you want for civilian purposes, because there are civilian reactors, and we will assure and copper bottom that. You simply have to stop this weaponization and the military aspect of the program, and they steadfastly refused. Point blank, they refused. They point blank refused to even talk about their ballistic missile program, which has been a clear and present danger to all. Even prior to what we have seen played out in the last 2 months, it was Turkey which was part of the mediation talks. And Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan was the one who said in that last week too, that at some point, all of us in the region, GCC and non-GCC, fellow Muslim states, need to thrash out with Tehran as to where we stand on this and its constant Damocles sword over all our heads.
All right. And yet you have a website like Axios reporting just a couple hours back that the deal is almost done, the memorandum of understanding for a 60-day ceasefire, and then, all these questions about Iran's nuclear program will be worked out later on. Just waiting the final seal of approval from Donald Trump. Do you feel that one could still be close to some sort of modicum for peace while these hostilities are on?
I've not seen the draft, so I'm not privy to that or what Axios says. I can only go by what I know of Iranian studies, and you can be sure that Mr. Pezeshkian, President Pezeshkian and Mr. Galibaf, the speaker, are being vilified daily, even as they're in Doha, which they were with Central Bank Governor Hemati, as being sellouts, because the hardliners want to scupper anything that they could possibly see these so-called pragmatists getting over the line, because obviously it flies in the face of what they believe as it's Iran's ideological stance against anti-Western US hegemony, and also the memory of their IRGC colleagues who have perished in these strikes. And there are many who are still paying for blood on that account. You can be sure of it.
All right. All right, Bozeen Bagwell, thank you so much for joining us and talking about the situation where we're not sure which way it's headed. Whenever we talk about the situation, it just seems to be unraveling at some point or the other. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment. Now, over the last 12 years, India's economy has transitioned from being the fragile five into the world's fourth largest global economy, all under the dynamic leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Yes, we're talking about the last 12 years. Since 2014, India has emerged as the world's fourth largest economy, powered by GST reforms, record FDI inflows, and a digital revolution led by UPI. Government data shows GDP tripling since 2014, FDI doubling, and UPI crossing 172 billion transactions in 2024. With over 1.5 crore GST taxpayers and a booming startup ecosystem, India's economic engine is firmly in top gear.
India's economic transformation over the 12 years of the Modi government is well documented. India became the world's fourth largest economy in 2025, driven by strong domestic reform and the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. India's nominal GDP tripled from 106.57 lakh crore rupees in 2014-15 to 331.03 lakh crore rupees in 2024-25. India remains the world's fastest growing major economy, with real GDP growth at 6.5%. India is on track to become the third largest economy by 2030, with a GDP of $7.3 trillion.
I've seen people when the country had about 40% of people below the poverty line, and now I can see people only 2 to 3% below the poverty line. The sharp difference that is there, that is emerging across the spectrum, urban areas, rural areas, across the spectrum, I feel very proud that the policies that have been pursued, especially in the last 10-12 years, especially because the focus has been on financial inclusion in the last 12 years, those policies are showing results. It's very, very satisfactory policy performance that people have come out of the poverty line. Very satisfying for a policy maker.
8 years of GST reforms have strengthened India's tax system. Over 1.52 crore active GST registrations were recorded as of July 2025. GST has reduced tax burden, improved transparency, and integrated the domestic market across states. The GST reform of October 2025 helped ease financial compliance for citizens and MSMEs. India's digital public infrastructure is one of the biggest success stories globally. Government data suggests digital transactions grew 9x in volume between FY18 and FY 2024. UPI processed 172 billion transactions in 2024 alone, making it the world's largest real-time payment system.
India is today seen as a very stable partner around the world. And people are rethinking their supply chains, they are rethinking where they would like to invest. So if we can be, not only that we have an environment, but if we can project, which we are doing, an environment which is predictable, which is stable, and which they can rely upon, lot of investment should start flowing into the country. Every crisis can be turned into a great opportunity.
Ministry of Commerce data shows a massive rise in FDI due to liberalized policies and investor-friendly reforms. FDI inflows increased from US dollars 36.05 billion in 2013-14 to US dollars 81.04 billion in FY 2024-25. Over US dollars 748.78 billion FDI has been received between 2014 and 2025. That's a 143% increase over the previous decade. Manufacturing FDI rose 18% in FY 2024-25. Services saw an increase of 19%, software and hardware 16%, trading 8%. India's transformation is driven by entrepreneurship, innovation, and digital public infrastructure. PLI schemes, MSME reforms, and digital infrastructure expansion have strengthened the startup ecosystem.
The question is that how much and how soon what would get replaced by AI and what would get replaced and where it would get redeployed. So we have to, especially in banking and financial services sector, we have to focus on few things. First, how does it benefit the end customer in order for him to avail a financial services at much cheaper, lower cost? And second, the operating benefit which will come to the financial institution should not become so dominant focus that we forget the human element involved in that.
India's services exports more than doubled from US dollars 158 billion in 2013-14 to US dollars 387 billion in 2024-25, a strong indicator of IT and startup sector growth. Clearly, India's macroeconomic fundamentals and broader digital and innovation push have provided a solid foundation for the Indian economy going forward. Bureau Report, DD India.
And Prime Minister Modi on Thursday met representatives of the Tribal Security Forum in New Delhi and praised their dedication to the tribal community. Sharing details of the meeting on social media, Prime Minister Modi said that meaningful discussions were held on the development and empowerment of tribal communities. He appreciated the forum's efforts towards the welfare and progress of tribal people. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval attended the first International Security Forum under the Security Council of the Russian Federation, along with the 14th annual meeting of senior security officials in Moscow on Thursday. The event, organized by Russian Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu, focused on challenges and threats to international security in the context of a multipolar world order. NSA Doval said there can be no double standards in the global fight against terrorism. And on the sidelines of the forum, the Indian NSA met Secretary of the Russian Security Council, Sergei Shoigu, to review cooperation in defense, security, energy and economic ties. The two also discussed the upcoming BRICS NSA's meeting in New Delhi. Now, amid rising oil prices due to the West Asia conflict, Germany's ambassador to India, Philip Ackermann, has stressed the need for countries to become less dependent on fossil fuels. Speaking with DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya, Ackermann said both India and Germany are vulnerable to global energy shocks and must work together on clean and sustainable energy solutions.
India and the world right now grappling with the energy crisis situation. How both countries, according to you, can actually come out of this?
So what is the need of the hour? Is trying to get more independent from fossil fuel. I think that's obvious. The more we create our own energy, the more we create our own electricity, our own fuels, the better it is for our countries. And that means that what we are doing, Germany and India, in the framework of this green and sustainable development partnership is exactly the right way to go forward. We need to invest in renewables. We need to find solutions for the energy crisis that are homemade and reliable and lasting. And I think this partnership can contribute to that aim.
Germany is investing almost 10 billion euros in India till 2030. What is the take on that? How is it going forward?
So we have almost 2,000 German companies here in India, and the number is growing. I think we have an investment that is considerable. Even the companies who are here are very inclined to reinvest their money here. We should not forget, however, that we have also Indian companies investing in Germany. Almost 900 Indian companies are investing in Germany, and that's a very good and healthy sign.
How do you see the current geopolitical situation, especially when it comes to Strait of Hormuz and also back home in Europe, the current situation?
So Strait of Hormuz is a problem for all of us. It's a problem for the world actually, because we see even in Germany we are not dependent on the Strait of Hormuz, but the energy prices are going up everywhere. With a lot of conviction and engagement that this war will end soon and that the Strait of Hormuz will be open soon.
India and Germany have a long and traditional history, and both countries are working closely with each other in when it comes to renewable energy as well as in other sectors to have a more potent bilateral arrangement and bilateral agreements. With Campus Sandeep, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for GD India from Delhi.
Now, India's Defence Secretary Rajesh Kumar Singh co-chaired the 16th Defence Policy Dialogue with Defence Secretary of Singapore, Joseph Leong, in Singapore on Thursday. During the meeting, wide-ranging discussions were held on key areas of defence cooperation, security collaboration and avenues for further strengthening the strategic relationship between the two sides. Defence Secretary Singh also visited the Digital Operations Technology Centre, or DOTC, of the Digital and Intelligence Service of the Singapore Armed Forces. The visit provided valuable insights into Singapore's advanced digital and technical capabilities, while exploring avenues for collaboration with the Indian Armed Forces in niche and emerging domains of warfare. Chief Minister of South Indian state of Karnataka, Siddaramaiah, on Thursday announced his resignation from the top post, marking a major political development in the state. Siddaramaiah submitted his resignation to the Governor's Special Secretary Prabhu Shankar at Lok Bhavan in Bengaluru. Deputy Chief Minister D.K. Shivkumar accompanied him during the visit, following a high-level breakfast meeting at the Chief Minister's official residence. Siddaramaiah served 2 terms as Karnataka Chief Minister, first from 2013 to 2018, and again after the Congress Party's emphatic victory in the 2023 Assembly elections till now. And let's now get you some sporting updates as well, starting with tennis, in fact with Prime Minister Modi, where he's congratulated Indian wrestlers for their outstanding performance at the 2026 Under-23 Asian Championships held in Da Nang, Vietnam. Posting on social media, Prime Minister Modi noted that the men's freestyle wrestling team secured 9 medals, including 4 golds, registering India's highest ever overall medal haul in the history of the Under-23 Asian Championships. He further said that the women wrestling contingent won 10 medals, including 6 golds. The PM also highlighted that the Greco-Roman team recorded its highest ever overall medal count with 8 medals. And world number 1 Jannik Sinner saw his dream of a maiden French Open title and a career Grand Slam come crashing down in dramatic fashion on Thursday, suffering a stunning 5-set defeat to Juan Manuel Carundolo in the second round at Roland Garros. Sinner looked firmly in control early on, racing through the opening 2 sets and leading 5-1 in the third before the match took a dramatic turn. Battling intense heat in Paris, the Italian repeatedly appeared exhausted on court and later took a medical timeout off the court as temperatures climbed above 30 degrees Celsius. From there, momentum shifted completely. Carundolo mounted a remarkable comeback, winning 4 straight games in the third set before dominating the final 2 sets to seal a memorable 3-6, 2-6, 7-5, 6-1, 6-1 victory. Sinner, who had been riding a 30-match winning streak since February, struggled physically as the contest wore on, often bending over in fatigue and attempting to shorten rallies with drop shots and serve-and-volley tactics. He was also seen using ice packs and a handheld fan during changeovers in an effort to cope with the scorching conditions. And in a thrilling round 3 clash at Norway Chess 2026 in Oslo, 18-year-old Indian Grandmaster R. Pragdananda defeated world number 1 Magnus Carlsen 3-0 in classical chess. Playing white, Pragdananda put pressure on Carlsen in a long game and stayed in control for most of it. He survived wild time trouble and won after Carlsen's late blunder. This was his second classical victory over the Norwegian, first in 2024. In time trouble, Carlsen briefly took control. Pragdananda recovered from a loss in Firuza and now stands clear second with 4.5 to 9. Firuza leads with 7.5 to 9, while Carlsen has just 1.5 to 9. And Eid al-Adha is the second of the 2 main festivals in Islam alongside Eid al-Fitr. It falls on the 10th day of Dhu al-Hijjah, the 12th and final month of Islamic lunar calendar. The festival signifies sacrifice, charity and compassion, strengthening bonds with community and friends. Dhul Hijjah holds a supreme importance in Islam, featuring the pivotal day of Arafah on the 9th day of the month and the celebration of Eid al-Adha on the 10th day. Eid al-Adha commemorates the story of test of Prophet Ibrahim's faith. Eid al-Adha, also called Bakrid in South Asia, demonstrates the willingness of Muslims' submission to Allah's will by sacrificing an animal. And that's all we have for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. Just scan the QR code on the screen to download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.